going to talk about this video again. I tried it once before. I didn't really like my voice in that one. I'm probably not going to like my voice in this one either. I'm trying to learn how to talk better on video, but anyway, minimum hate. I'm already doing bad. Minimum wage hike will destroy American jobs. This came out like a year ago. Yeah, over a year and a half ago. And I just thought that would be something to talk about, get my feelings out there, because I'll watch a few Matt Walsh videos here and there. So anyone just watching the channel, I'm going to try to focus on just workers' rights, unionizing, and things like that. And Matt Walsh is someone who I kind of hate watch a lot. He's really someone that, whenever I hear him talk about this issue specifically, I just spite him a little more, because he just really puts down other jobs, and he puts down other people. He tries to draw lines, and he tries to divide the working class into different popularity groups. And it's like, let me just do this one step at a time.
From NBC News, it says raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, a proposal supported by President Joe Biden, would result in the loss of 1.4 million jobs, but would bring nearly 1 million people out of poverty over the next 4 years.
Okay, so talking about losing jobs, now I'm just assuming things here, but what I would assume is those jobs would be lost because the people who have 2 and 3 jobs wouldn't need to have those multiple jobs. They want to talk about, we've created so many jobs, but all of the jobs that were created were like $7.25, $8 an hour, and no one deserves to work for that pitiful amount of a salary. I don't care. There is no such thing as unskilled labor. There is no labor you can do that is worth only $7.25 an hour. If you work 40 hours a week, you deserve to have all of your basic needs met and then some. You should be able to pay your rent. You should be able to pay a mortgage even. You should be able to pay for your healthcare services. You should be able to pay for groceries, for gas. You should be able to make a couple small mistakes here and there and not all of a sudden be out on the street. There is no labor where I think the skill is so low that that's not possible. And I'm really hoping everyone watching, every worker out there, doesn't put down their other fellow workers and think that they deserve any less than they do.
The study conducted by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office was also found that increasing the minimum wage would raise the cumulative budget deficit from 2021 to 2023 by $54 billion.
This budget deficit, I think, is something that people don't really care about. And if you ask your average American how the deficit impacts their daily life, I don't think they'd be able to give you much of an answer, because it's not something that we think about often. What we care about is having, more money in our pockets, more wages. We want our wages to increase. We want the price of goods to decrease. We want to be able to afford things without having to work multiple jobs. We want to be able to start a family. If you're one of those people who are concerned about having having a strong family unit, a way to have a strong family unit is make it so the average person can afford to have a family with just one paycheck. All right, it would be a beautiful thing if you only needed one parent to work and the other parent could actually stay home. I would love that. But, the same people who constantly, talk about how, the schools are indoctrinating our children or this and that, are the same people who, make it difficult for workers to be able to pay for everything on just one person's salary. I would really love it if, just one parent was needed to provide all the financial needs for the family. That would be beautiful.
And would drive inflation, resulting in higher prices for goods and services.
All right, hindsight 2020, but at the same time, just it has me a little upset when, the whole reason why we didn't increase the minimum wage back then was because we didn't want inflation to go up, but inflation still went up. And, I would have much rather have had an increase in wages with the increase in inflation so we could, people can better fight off that, that, difference between wage and everything they have to pay for. But now we just have inflation with people having even smaller salaries. So, we did a great job there.
BO evaluated proposal that would gradually increase the minimum wage, reaching $15 an hour by 2025. Okay, so $15 an hour minimum wage. The stuff about the deficit increasing by $54 billion, that's the kind of thing that should disturb us. We should.
Matt, he actually said something that's not, I'm surprised he's saying it now. But, I'll just let him talk. But I guess, agree with him kind of, except Republicans do this a lot more than Democrats do. Complain about the deficit when, both sides do this to an extent, but Republicans will definitely complain about the deficit when they just don't want to pass a bill.
Care. That's an argument that should be effective, is pointing out the increase in deficit. But what we've discovered is that really nobody cares about the deficit. Nobody cares about spending. We sort of, this is just the truth. Both sides of the aisle, we take turns pretending to care when the other side's person is in office. How many conservatives over the last 4 years of Trump said a damn thing about it's too much spending, deficit? All of that was out the window. Very little was said about that. And that's just the way it goes. And of course, but on the left, there are people that sort of became all of a sudden budget hawks under Trump, and now it goes the other way. So this is the way it goes. That is not going to be, it should probably be an effective line of argument against any plan, is by saying how it'll increase the deficit. But it's not. Now, the part about losing 1 million jobs, there you go. That's something people.
I'm going to repeat myself just a bit here. Yeah, but if those jobs are low wage, $725 an hour jobs, then I don't want people working that job. And because the system we work under, and I'm probably going to bring this up again later, but the system we work under is a race to the bottom. It's a race to see who can do the most amount of work for the least amount of money. And people in desperate situations will constantly, be forced to make those tough decisions, out of just basic survival, really. I'll talk about that more in a second, though.
Do care about, should care about, and do. And in fact, speaking of it, related news, I think, this is from Biz Journals. It says Kroger is about to test its first store that offers only self-service checkout lanes using enhanced capabilities.
Okay, yeah, so every time they talk about increasing the minimum wage, you get articles left and right about how these corporations, these businesses are going to implement new automated technology. They're going to have more self-checkouts. They're going to have more AI behind the register. But every time they talk about it, it never comes to fruition. This is something that the ruling class tries to scare the working class with. It's something they try to do time and time again to make sure that we stay in our lane, we stay in our place, and they keep their knees on our necks. We can't let them scare us like this. Because every time I think it was 10 years ago or so, when we were trying to raise the minimum wage to $10, we were trying to raise it to $10. And there were so many articles, especially about McDonald's, coming out saying, okay, well, if you want to increase the wage to $10, then we're going to need to fire all of our workers and have more automated services, which did not happen. And if it would really save them money, then they would have already done it.
Downtown Cincinnati-based Kroger, the nation's largest operator of traditional supermarkets, plans to launch the pilot test of the all self-checkout store in Dallas on February 17th. It's converting one of its smaller stores on Cedar Springs Road for the pilot. Now, they're not directly making a connection here, but I think we can see the connection. If you try to force these companies to pay people $15 an hour.
So the way he talks about these companies is like it's like, oh, if you're trying to force them to do this, then they're going to hurt the workers. So we just need to give in to their demands. No, that's when the people in power needs to step in and protect the workers. They need to protect the people. The people make up this country. If we wanted to, this whole country could come to a halt. That's a power that you and I have. But they're too scared. They're so scared that they try to divide us, and they're successfully doing that every day. We need to come together and tell them that we're not divided.
Or to do labor that just isn't worth that.
There is no such thing as unskilled labor. There is no labor out there that is not worth at least $15 an hour. Minimum wage shouldn't be $7.25. There's no job where $7.25 is an acceptable wage. There's no job out there where $10 an hour is an acceptable wage. There's not even a job out there where $15 an hour is an acceptable wage. You deserve more. I deserve more. Everybody deserves more. We all deserve to be able to pay for everything we need. If you work 40 hours a week, there's no labor you can do that's not worth you having a shelter over your head, food in the fridge, and clothes on your back.
Especially when it's labor that can be replaced.
I'm pausing a lot, but this labor that can be replaced, one, I don't even think we're at that step yet. But two, decades down the road with automation, I don't think that company should have a right to just fire the employee just because they're able to automate the process now. I believe if the government truly cared about the people, they'd step in, they'd say, hey, you can't replace that worker just yet. When that worker retires or when that worker wants to move on to another job, that's when you can add in that automated robot or whatever to kind of replace that person's job. I remember we've done, or I don't know if America has, but other places have done similar things where, if they found a better way to do something, they don't just get rid of the old person working there. They'll be like, okay, work here as long, until you retire or whatever. And then once you finish up your years, we'll implement this new step. Of course, it takes a bit more time. And yes, the company won't make as much profit, but I'm sick and tired of putting the company's profits over people. I think people should be over everything else. The company's profits, not the most important thing. But in the system we have, it's like, it's like we would save a dime. We would fire someone if it meant that company could save a dime. And that's just horrible. I don't think a company's profits is worth another person's life and ability to pursue liberty and happiness.
With machines, then that's what's going to happen. I don't like it. Personally, I would much rather have the people there having, even as an antisocial person,
I'm going to go ahead and just make a bold assumption, but I'm going to assume Matt Walsh doesn't actually care about the people behind the counter. They don't care. He doesn't care about, about teachers in the classroom. He doesn't care about people in the drive-through. He doesn't care about the truck drivers. He just doesn't care about too many of the working class by the way he talks, by the way he puts down certain members of society. Some of the hardest jobs I've ever had were jobs where I was working minimum wage. And so to go out there and say that people working those hard jobs don't deserve a living wage is just a slap in the face to so many people. And it's just disgusting.
Myself. I will use the self-checkout lane just on antisocial grounds. So I guess I'm part of the problem as far as that goes. I mean, if you give me that option, then I'll take it. But I recognize that in reality, it'd probably be best if I didn't have that option. It'd probably be best if there are actual people doing those jobs. So that is better. But you force these companies to pay $15 an hour, and this is what's going to happen.
That tone
As
right
I've said
there,
many times.
That's just a disgusting tone. like I'm not the only one who thinks that, right? Like I'm not the only one who's like, oh, you force these companies, you're forcing these companies to fire these workers. The people in power need to protect the working class. It's just sickening how he's talking. Yeah, he's like, oh, you're forcing these companies. These companies have no other choice but to fire these workers just so they can make a few extra dollars. It's just disgusting. Simple as that.
And the minimum wage should be zero.
This part.
That's where you start. That's the
I'll
minimum,
talk about it in a second.
or maybe a penny. Like that's the actual minimum of what labor could possibly be worth. And
yeah, so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the system we live in is a race to the bottom. People like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh believe that there should be no minimum wage. Now, I don't believe in that. And all right, so I'll say they believe in that because they think if a job or if a company is not offering enough money, then obviously no one would work there, and no one would work that job, and then the company is just losing out by not providing a good enough wage. But time and time again in history, as history has shown, if you give companies a chance, a small fraction, if you let them get their foot in the door, they will exploit the workers as soon as possible. And they will do anything they can to exploit workers. So in the system we have is a race to the bottom. They want people who will do the most amount of work for the least amount of money. And people under desperate situations are going to work for the least amount of money. You can think about all the undocumented immigrants. Everyone's saying, oh, they're taking our jobs. Well, the jobs that they're working at, companies are abusing that power and they're paying them less than minimum wage. And then as soon as the worker is like, hey, this is really, I can't live like this. Can I please have some more money? That's when the company steps in and is like, okay, we'll call ICE. We'll do something about you trying to speak out. And hey, don't worry, we'll pay a few $100s. We'll pay $1,000 or so for the fine. It's no problem for us. We'll find someone else who will do that job for as cheap as you or even cheaper than you. And just the companies and the businesses will constantly try to find just as many people as possible to do just the most amount of work for the least amount of pay. And we can't keep letting them be the ones in charge.
you go up from there. And one thing that gets lost in this discussion is not only are you wiping out jobs, but if you're forcing the employer to pay everyone $15 an hour, effectively giving a raise maybe to some people who have not actually earned that and aren't doing a job,
then I think you should give that person a raise as well. If someone's already working $15 an hour, then they deserve a raise when you're raising the minimum wage for everyone else. That's fair, I don't think you should tell your fellow worker, hey, or I don't think you should tell your boss, hey, don't give this person more money because that's not fair to me. You should say, hey, give us both more money. You're in this together. People like Matt Walsh, people, who have even just a semblance of power will do anything they can to divide the working class into subsections so that, we look at the person making $1 less than us. We look at that person and we say, they don't deserve as much as we do. They're not as human as we are. We deserve more money because we put in harder work. And the fact of the matter is, meritocracy is a lie. The harder you work does not always equate to getting paid more. That's just a straight, flat out lie. The job I'm at now, there was a time at my job where I just worked the least amount. And like I did not feel like going to work, but I show up to work, do the least amount of work possible, and then just go home. Eventually, my boss pulled me in, and I thought he was going to fire me. He gave me a promotion instead. So So yeah, there's very few jobs where working harder will actually give you more money. So don't, and also if you're paying someone minimum wage, expect minimum effort. Okay, if you, because like when I got my promotion, I got a bit of a pay increase, and I worked harder. I actually enjoyed going to work more. And he's going to bring this up later too, so I don't want to go too much into it. But if you pay people more, they're typically happier being at that job, and they'll have more energy where they won't need to take up a second job, and now they're not doing their first job as well.
That's worth $15 an hour. And there are going to be a lot of other employees at that store who could be worth $20 or $25 an hour.
Then they deserve to have that money. Okay, there's not too many stores out there that actually do pay at $25 an hour, let alone $15 an hour. Okay, but you're not even, apparently Matt Walsh doesn't even think that they're worth $15 an hour. Also, there's no labor that's not worth $15 an hour, just straight up. No labor that's not worth at least that much.
Very worthy of.
Don't let anyone tell you that your work is not worth that much. Your work is worth so much more, and no matter what they say, I'm here for you, and I believe that the work that you put in has value. As someone who has worked in the fast food industry before, it's one of the harder jobs out there, and you get paid the least for it. So I definitely do not think that's fair. And saying that people who work those jobs don't deserve a higher wage, it's just cruel. It's just cruel, and it's just terrible. Like,
of promotion and raises, and now won't get it because the government is forcing the employer to give a raise even to people who haven't earned it. That to me is also a problem.
It's not.
I mean, we've all had this experience, right? When you go to a fast food place, you're interacting with customer service. We've all gone into a grocery store or to a fast food place, and we've interacted with a customer service representative who basically just when you look at them, it's like they're trying to visibly murder you. You can see visible hatred in their eyes.
It goes back to what I said earlier about if you're having multiple jobs, I'm not going to put in as much energy and as much effort into that first job. And it also goes into the other thing I said earlier, where if you pay people more, they're more likely to put in more effort, and they're more likely to be happier at that job. If you're paying someone $8 an hour to have to provide service to someone like Matt Walsh, who doesn't even think you deserve that much, I'm not going to have much of a happy look on my face either.
Eyes. It's not even just bad customer service. It's hateful customer. They hate you for being there.
Matt, I'm not going to.
So we've all experienced that. But then we also experienced customer service people, someone working at a register or working at fast food, who's just wonderful, delightful. They put a smile on your face. They're absolutely on top.
I went to Chick-fil-A it was a week or 2 weeks ago, and I had ordered it through the app, and I thought that I had avoided the lunch rush, but apparently I didn't, because when I got there, it was super packed still, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know there'd be so many people here, and I just felt so bad about adding another order to their long list of orders. But they got through it so quick, and I mean, I was so fast, and I started thinking and just getting real sad because I'm like, these people deserve to get paid way more than what I'm making, and it's just not fair at all. Eventually I got to like the front of the line. It didn't take long at all. Like, they were really pumping out orders, and I even told, like, I think it was the assistant manager or the manager there, and I was like, hey, you guys are working too hard. Y'all are working pretty fast, and he kind of shrugged it off and was like, oh, we're just cooking chicken. But I think they're providing great value to our society. I think what they do definitely deserves more than just $15 an hour. I get paid like $21, $22 an hour, and I don't put in nearly the amount of work I put in a week is like still less than what they put into that hour probably. Like, I just felt so bad knowing that they didn't make as much money as me. when they fully deserve way more than I do. And I honestly wish I could do more for them. Like, if they ever ask me to, I'll stand in line and picket with them. I'll stand right with them if they wanted to strike or do anything like that. But I know Chick-fil-A is pretty brutal on things like that, so no, I just want to help them. I really do. They deserve more.
Of it. The idea that they should be paid exactly the same, or that
They, if someone's providing better, if they're working harder, they deserve more, more money. Absolutely. I think the person who's still, doing the work also deserves to pay, their bills and, provide for themselves.
person who hates you just for being there is automatically worth $15 an hour. All they do is show up, put in absolutely zero effort whatsoever, and they're automatically worth $15.
No one's saying you shouldn't be able to fire anyone just because, like, I assume in this scenario he's talking about, like, they're literally punching in the clock, doing nothing, and punching out. Like, that's something you can still fire someone over. Like, because then at that point they're literally not doing the work. And I think at that point, yeah, the boss should have every right to fire them if they're just straight up not doing the work. But if they're doing the work, then they deserve to have food, shelter, and everything else they need, and then some. No one's saying that they shouldn't be allowed to like fire people who aren't doing the work.